The scorching Arizona sun beat down on Zara Foster's back as she kept her head low, rushing past the general store where townsfolk gathered to gossip. Their whispers followed her like vultures circling prey, but today she couldn't afford to hide away. Her brother needed medicine, and no amount of cruel words would keep her from that errand. "Look who's decided to grace us with her presence," a woman's voice called out, loud enough to ensure Zara heard. "Better not look her in the face, might turn you to stone." Zara clutched the worn shawl tighter around her shoulders, using one hand to adjust the way it draped partially over the left side of her face. The burned, puckered flesh that stretched from her left temple down to her jaw had been her unwanted companion for 12 years now, ever since the fire that claimed her parents when she was 16. At 28, she had long stopped hoping for acceptance in Copper Creek. The year was 1875, and while the small mining town was slowly modernizing, mines remained as narrow as the dusty streets. Zara kept walking, her steps quickening as the whispers grew louder. "Miss Foster." Mr. Jenkins, the apothecary, called out as she entered his shop, the little bell above the door announcing her arrival. His voice was kind, one of the few in town that didn't drip with disgust or pity. "I've got that tonic for young Thomas ready. Thank you, Mr. Jenkins." Zara's voice was soft, barely audible. Years of keeping to herself had trained her to speak just loud enough to be heard and not a decibel more. As she reached for her coin purse, the door swung open behind her. The heavy tread of boots announced a newcomer, and Zara instinctively angled herself away, the scarred side of her face turned toward the wall. "Afternoon," a deep voice drawled, unfamiliar to her ears. "Mighty hot day to be wearing so many layers, madam." Zara froze, realizing he was addressing her. Strangers were rare in Copper Creek, and newcomers hadn't yet learned to pretend she was invisible. "Just need to finish my business, sir," she murmured, still not turning. "Then I'll be on my way. No rush on my account," the man replied easily. "Take your time," Mr. Jenkins cleared his throat. "That'll be 75 cents, Miss Foster." Zara counted out the coins with trembling fingers, painfully aware of the stranger's presence behind her. She could sense his eyes on her back. "You're new to Copper Creek," Mr. Jenkins said conversationally to the man. "Just rode in yesterday. Name's Grant Mackenzie. Looking for work with the cattle outfits in these parts. A cowboy, then." Zara tucked the medicine bottle safely into her basket and gathered her courage to leave, which meant turning around and likely facing the man's inevitable reaction to her scars. "Thank you, Mr. Jenkins," she said, finally turning. The cowboy stood taller than most men in town, his broad shoulders filling out a dust-covered denim shirt. His face was tanned from the sun, with lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often. Dark hair peeked out from under a well-worn hat. When her eyes met his, she braced for the widening eyes, the quick aversion of gaze, the stiffening of posture. Instead, he simply nodded politely, his warm brown eyes meeting hers directly. "Madam," he said, tipping his hat. Zara hurried past him, confusion mingling with the familiar shame. Had he not noticed? Impossible, everyone noticed. The remainder of her errands passed in a blur, and she was grateful to leave town behind, following the narrow path that led to the small cabin she shared with her younger brother Thomas. At 21, he should have been out making his own way in the world, but a bout of tuberculosis last winter had left him weakened. Zara had nursed him back from death's door, but his recovery was slow. "Tommy," she called as she entered their home, "I've got your medicine." Her brother's thin face brightened as she entered his room. Despite his illness, his spirit remained unbroken. "Did Jenkins give you any trouble about the price this time?" "No, he was fair." Zara measured out the tonic carefully. "There's a newcomer in town, a cowboy looking for work." Thomas took the medicine with a grimace. "Maybe he's hiring. I could use some fresh air and honest work." "You're not strong enough yet," Zara reminded him gently. "Besides, we're doing all right with my sewing commissions." "We're surviving, Zara, not living." Thomas's eyes, so like their mother's, filled with frustration. "And you shouldn't have to hide away here with me. You should have a life of your own." Zara turned away, busying herself with straightening his blankets. I have everything I need right here." "Liar," Thomas said, but his voice was gentle. "I see how you look when you read those romance novels from the library. You want more than this." "Those are just stories, Tommy." Zara sat on the edge of his bed. "Real life is different, especially for people like me." "You mean people with beautiful souls and too much heart?" He reached for her hand. "The right person would see past the scars, Zara." She squeezed his fingers, not bothering to argue. They'd had this conversation countless times, and her brother's optimism never wavered, but Zara knew better. In the real world, beauty mattered, and she had lost hers in the flames long ago. The next morning brought unexpected news. Mrs. Winters, who owned the largest ranch outside town, had sent word that she needed help with sewing. Her daughter's wedding was approaching, and there were linens and dresses to be prepared. "You should go," Thomas insisted. "The money would be good, and you're the finest seamstress in the territory." "The Winters Ranch is 5 miles out," Zara protested. "I can't leave you alone all day." "I'm not a child, Zara. I can manage." His eyes softened. "Please, do this for me if not for yourself. We need the money, and I need to know you're not wasting your life taking care of me." Unable to refuse his pleading eyes, Zara agreed. The following day, she packed her sewing basket and set out at dawn for the Winters Ranch. The journey gave her time to think, to prepare herself for the inevitable discomfort of working in someone else's home where she couldn't control who saw her or how they reacted. The Winters Ranch was impressive, a sprawling main house surrounded by well-maintained outbuildings, corrals filled with horses, and pastures dotted with cattle. As Zara approached, she spotted activity near the barn. Several cowboys were breaking horses, the animals bucking and snorting as the men struggled to stay mounted. She kept her distance, following the path to the main house. Before she reached the porch, a horse's wild neigh made her turn. One of the animals had broken free and was charging blindly across the yard directly toward her. Zara froze, her heart thundering as loudly as the hoofbeats. Suddenly, a figure darted between her and the oncoming horse. A man whistled sharply, raising his arms to divert the animal. The horse reared, hooves slashing air mere feet from where Zara stood. "Easy, boy," the man called, his voice steady despite the danger. The horse snorted, pawing the ground nervously but no longer charging. Zara's breath caught as she recognized the cowboy from the apothecary. Grant Mackenzie. He was speaking softly to the horse now, one hand extended palm up, slowly moving toward the nervous animal. "You're all right," he was saying, though Zara wasn't sure if he was addressing her or the horse. "Nobody's going to hurt you." The horse finally allowed him to grab its halter, and Grant glanced back at Zara. "You okay, madam?" She nodded wordlessly, still clutching her sewing basket in a white-knuckled grip. "Sorry about that," he said, his easy smile making an appearance despite the tense moment. "New horses sometimes don't take kindly to the breaking process." "Thank you," Zara managed, keeping her face partially turned away. Another cowboy jogged up, taking the horse from Grant. "Sorry, Mackenzie, damn beast nearly got away from me." "No harm done," Grant replied, his eyes still on Zara. "Miss Foster was just about to get trampled, though." Zara started at the use of her name. "You know who I am, small town," he shrugged. "Word gets around. You're here to see Mrs. Winters about the sewing, I reckon." Before she could answer, the front door of the main house opened, and Alina Winters emerged. A handsome woman in her 50s, she had a reputation for fairness but also for running her ranch with an iron hand. "Miss Foster," she called, "I see you've met our new foreman, Mr. Mackenzie." "Foreman?" Zara glanced at Grant in surprise. He'd only just arrived in town, yet he'd secured such a position already. "Just arrived yesterday and already saving damsels in distress," Mrs. Winters continued, amusement coloring her voice. "Come inside, Miss Foster. We have much to discuss about my daughter's wedding preparations." Zara followed Mrs. Winters into the house, acutely aware of Grant watching her go. Inside, the coolness was a welcome relief from the morning sun. "My daughter Harriet is marrying the banker's son next month, Mrs. Winters explained, leading Zara to a sitting room where fabrics were laid out. "I need tablecloths, napkins, and alterations to her grandmother's wedding dress. I hear you're the best with a needle for 50 miles. I'm honored you think so, Zara replied, already examining the delicate lace on the vintage wedding gown. I don't think I know, Mrs. Winters said firmly. Now, I'll need you here daily until the wedding. Can you manage that? Zara hesitated, thinking of Thomas. I have my brother at home, bring him, Mrs. Winters interrupted. I've heard about his condition. The fresh air would do him good and we've plenty of space. He can rest in the guest room while you work. The generosity was unexpected. That's very kind, but I'm not being kind, Miss Foster. I'm being practical. I need your full attention on this work, and you won't give it if you're worrying about your brother. Mrs. Winters' expression softened slightly. Besides, my husband could use some help with the bookkeeping. If your brother is well enough for light desk work, it would benefit us both. Zara couldn't refuse such an offer. The money would see them through winter, and Thomas would indeed benefit from the change of scenery. Thank you, we accept. Good, you can start tomorrow. Mackenzie will bring the wagon to collect you and your brother in the morning. With that settled, Mrs. Winters showed Zara the fabrics and patterns she had in mind. As Zara worked on initial measurements for the wedding dress alterations, she couldn't help wondering why Grant Mackenzie had been appointed foreman so quickly, or why he hadn't reacted to her scars the way most people did. Both mysteries occupied her thoughts on the walk home. Thomas was delighted by the arrangement. It's perfect, Zara. Fresh air, new faces, and maybe even some work for me. See, things are looking up. Zara smiled at his enthusiasm but remained cautious. Don't get too excited. It's temporary work and people can be cruel. Or they can surprise you, Thomas countered. Not everyone is like the gossips in town. The next morning, Zara woke before dawn to prepare. She helped Thomas dress in his best shirt, packed their necessary belongings, and was waiting nervously when the sound of wagon wheels announced Grant's arrival. Good morning, he called, jumping down from the driver's seat. Mrs. Winters sent along extra blankets for the ride. His gaze moved to Thomas, who had emerged from the cabin. You must be Thomas Foster. And you're Grant Mackenzie, the new foreman, Thomas replied, extending his hand. Word travels fast around here, Grant's handshake was firm. That it does. Let me help you into the wagon. As Grant assisted Thomas, Zara locked up their cabin. When she turned, Grant was watching her, his expression unreadable. I can take that, he said, nodding to her bag. Their fingers brushed as she handed it over, sending an unexpected warmth up Zara's arm. She quickly withdrew her hand, adjusting her shawl to better cover her scars. The journey to the Winters ranch passed more pleasantly than Zara had anticipated. Grant proved to be a good conversationalist, drawing Thomas out of his shell with questions about his interests and knowledge of the territory. How did you become foreman so quickly? Thomas finally asked. Zara said you just arrived in town, Grant chuckled. Luck, mostly. I worked the cattle drives from Texas for years, then managed a ranch near Santa Fe. Mrs. Winters' previous foreman retired suddenly, and she was desperate for someone with experience. We crossed paths in town, and after a brief conversation about cattle breeding practices, she offered me the position. Just like that, Zara couldn't help asking. Grant glanced at her, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Mrs. Winters is a good judge of character. Says she can spot competence from 100 yards. Upon arriving at the ranch, Thomas was settled in the guest room as promised, while Zara was shown to a bright corner of the house where she could work on the sewing. The day passed quickly, the rhythm of her needle a familiar comfort as she began the detailed work on the wedding linens. Late in the afternoon, as Zara was gathering her materials to check on Thomas, a shadow fell across her workspace. She looked up to find Grant standing in the doorway. Mrs. Winters asked me to show you and your brother where you'll be having supper, he said. She insists you dine with the family while you're working here. Zara tensed. That's not necessary. We're comfortable eating simply. It wasn't an offer, Grant interrupted gently. It was an instruction. Mrs. Winters is quite determined. Zara followed him reluctantly to Thomas's room, where her brother had clearly enjoyed a restful day. His cheeks had more color than she'd seen in months. Mr. Winters had me looking over some of the ranch ledgers, Thomas told her excitedly as they walked to the dining room. Says I have a good head for numbers. The dining room was intimidating, a long table set with fine china and multiple utensils that Zara had only read about in books. Mrs. Winters sat at one end, her husband at the other, with their daughter Harriet and her fiancé on one side. "Ah, Miss Foster, Mr. Foster," Mrs. Winters nodded to the empty chairs. "Please join us." To Zara's surprise, Grant took the seat beside her. The conversation flowed around the table, primarily focused on wedding plans and ranch business. Zara kept her head slightly bowed, eating carefully and speaking only when directly addressed. "Miss Foster," Mr. Winters said suddenly, "I understand you've been caring for your brother since your parents passed. That shows remarkable character." Zara looked up, startled by the direct address. "Anyone would do the same for family, sir." "Not anyone," Mrs. Winters disagreed. "Many would have sent him to a sanitarium or pawned him off on relatives. Your devotion is admirable." "Thomas is all I have," Zara said simply. "And quite talented with bookkeeping," Mr. Winters added. "I could use regular help with the accounts if he's interested in more permanent work." Thomas's face lit up. "I would be honored, sir." "And what about you, Miss Foster?" Harriet asked. "Will you continue with sewing after my wedding?" Zara nodded. "It's how I support us." "You're wasted on mending and basic dressmaking," Mrs. Winters observed. "The detail work you've done today shows true artistry. Have you considered opening a proper shop?" I prefer to work from home," Zara replied, uncomfortable with everyone's attention. "Because of your face?" The blunt question came from Harriet, earning her a sharp look from her mother. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Zara felt her chest tighten, the familiar shame washing over her. "Some people prefer privacy for all sorts of reasons, Miss Winters." Grant's deep voice broke the silence. "Not everyone needs to parade themselves before the world to feel valuable." His defense, though unexpected, only increased Zara's discomfort. She didn't want to be the subject of discussion at all. "I didn't mean offense," Harriet said quickly. "I just think it's a shame to hide talent because of what others might think." "Perhaps," Zara said quietly, "but the world is what it is." The conversation mercifully shifted to other topics, and Zara barely touched the rest of her meal. When dinner concluded, she excused herself to check on her sewing supplies before bed. In the workroom, she stood by the window, staring out at the darkening ranch yard. Footsteps behind her made her tense, but she didn't turn. "I apologize for Harriet." Grant's voice was soft. "She speaks without thinking sometimes. There's no need to apologize." "She only said what everyone thinks." Grant moved to stand beside her at the window. "Not everyone." Zara glanced at him skeptically. "You're being kind, Mr. Mackenzie, but we both know the truth. People see the scars first and often never see past them." "Some people are shallow that way," he agreed. "But others understand that scars tell stories. They're evidence we survived something that tried to destroy us." His words caught her off guard. "Is that what you see when you look at me? Evidence of survival?" Grant turned fully toward her then, his eyes intent on hers. "I see a woman who protects her brother, who creates beauty with her hands, who carries herself with dignity despite cruelty. The scars, they're just where the light gets in." Zara blinked, unsure she'd heard him correctly. "What did you say?" "It's something my grandmother used to say. There's an old Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold. The philosophy is that the breaks and repairs are part of the object's history, not something to hide. That's where the light gets in," she'd say. Tears threatened to spill from Zara's eyes. In 12 years, no one had ever spoken about her scars with such grace. "You should get some rest," Grant said, seeming to sense her emotional response. "Tomorrow will be another busy day." He left her standing by the window, her mind replaying his words. That's where the light gets in. She touched the ridged skin on her cheek, feeling it differently under her fingertips than she had in years. The days that followed established a new routine. Zara sewed from morning until late afternoon, occasionally consulting with Harriet or Mrs. Winters about details for the wedding. Thomas grew stronger, spending his mornings helping Mr. Winters with accounts and his afternoons resting or reading in the garden. Grant was often busy with ranch work, but he made a point to check on the Fosters daily. Sometimes he brought Zara a cup of coffee or simply stopped by to ask about her progress. Each interaction left her more confused about his intentions. One afternoon, about 2 weeks into their stay, Zara was taking a rare break in the garden when Grant found her. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, hat in hand. She nodded, making room on the bench. "Shouldn't you be supervising the cattle drive preparations?" "Delegated," he said with a smile. "Even foremen need breaks." He settled beside her, his tall frame dwarfing the delicate garden bench. "The wedding dress looks beautiful." Harriet was showing it off to the kitchen staff. "It's coming along," Zara acknowledged. "The beadwork is time-consuming, but worth the effort." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, watching bees flit among the late summer blooms. "Your brother's doing well here," Grant observed. "He's got color in his cheeks again." "Yes," Zara agreed. "The change has been good for him." "And for you?" Grant asked, his voice gentler. "Has it been good for you too?" Zara hesitated. "It's different. I'm not accustomed to being around so many people all day, or being treated like a normal person." His directness startled her. "Yes," she admitted quietly. "That too." Grant leaned forward, arms resting on his knees. "Can I ask you something personal, Miss Foster?" Zara tensed but nodded. "How did it happen? The fire, I mean. You don't have to answer if it's too painful." No one had asked directly in years. Most people in town either knew the story or made up their own versions. "I was 16, she began slowly. "Our house caught fire in the night. A lantern fell in the kitchen. My father got Thomas out first, then went back for my mother and me. I was trapped in my bedroom when he reached me. The hallway was already engulfed." She paused, the memories vivid despite the passage of time. "He wrapped me in a wet blanket and carried me through the flames, but part of my face was exposed. We almost made it out when a beam fell. It hit my father and ignited the blanket near my face." Grant remained silent, his expression somber. "Neighbors pulled me out, but it was too late for my parents." Zara's voice grew even quieter. "Thomas was only 9. We had no other family, so I became his guardian. The town took pity on us at first, but pity eventually turns to discomfort, then avoidance." "And you've been hiding away ever since," Grant concluded. Zara bristled slightly. "I haven't been hiding, I've been surviving." "There's a difference between surviving and living, Miss Foster." "So everyone keeps telling me," she replied with an edge to her voice. "But when the world makes it clear you're unwelcome in it, survival becomes the goal." Grant studied her for a long moment. "What if the world is bigger than Copper Creek? What if there are places where people might see you? Like where? Another small town where I'd be the scarred spinster, a city where there are simply more people to stare and whisper." Zara stood, suddenly needing space. "You don't understand what it's like." "You're right," Grant conceded, rising as well. "I don't know exactly what you've experienced, but I do know something about carrying scars that others can't see." Before Zara could ask what he meant, one of the ranch hands called for Grant. With an apologetic look, he excused himself, leaving Zara with more questions than answers. That evening at dinner, Zara noticed Grant's absence. When she inquired, Mrs. Winters explained he was handling a situation with cattle rustlers along the northern boundary. "Is that dangerous?" Thomas asked, concern evident in his voice. Mr. Winters nodded gravely. "Rustlers can be desperate men, but Mackenzie knows what he's doing. He served as a cavalry scout during the war, knows how to handle himself in a fight." The revelation added another layer to the enigma that was Grant Mackenzie. A war veteran, a skilled horseman, an experienced ranch manager, yet he spoke to her with a gentleness that belied his rough exterior. 2 days passed with no sign of Grant. Zara told herself her concern was merely neighborly, but she found herself watching the horizon for riders more often than she cared to admit. On the 3rd day, as she was fitting Harriet for final adjustments to the wedding dress, hoofbeats announced a rider's approach. From the window, Zara spotted Grant dismounting from a dusty horse, his movements stiff as if in pain. Without thinking, she excused herself and hurried outside. "Mr. Mackenzie," she called as she approached. "You're hurt." Grant turned, surprise registering on his face before he masked it with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just tired, Miss Foster, nothing to worry about." but as he turned to lead his horse to the barn, Zara spotted a dark stain on his shirt. "You're bleeding." "It's nothing," he insisted, but his complexion had grown pale. "Mrs. Winters," Zara called to the ranch owner who had emerged onto the porch. "Mr. Mackenzie needs a doctor." "Nonsense," Grant protested, but his knees buckled slightly, betraying him. Within minutes, Grant was escorted to his quarters in the foreman's cabin, and Mr. Winters sent a ranch hand to fetch the doctor from town. Zara, experienced in caring for her brother's illness, offered to clean the wound until medical help arrived. Mrs. Winters led her to Grant's cabin, a small but comfortable dwelling separate from the bunkhouse where the other hands slept. Inside, Grant sat on the edge of his bed, grimacing as he tried to remove his shirt. "Let me help," Zara said, setting down the basin of hot water and clean cloths Mrs. Winters had provided. "This isn't necessary," Grant began, but Mrs. Winters cut him off. "Don't be stubborn, Mackenzie. Let the woman help you." Left alone with him, Zara approached cautiously. "Can you raise your arms?" Grant tried, wincing in pain. "Not without reopening the wound, I suspect." Zara retrieved scissors from her pocket. "I'll have to cut the shirt off." He nodded consent, sitting perfectly still as she carefully cut away the blood-soaked fabric. As the shirt fell away, Zara caught her breath. A long gash ran along his left side, still seeping blood, but it wasn't the fresh wound that startled her. His torso was a map of old scars, some from bullets, others from knives or shrapnel. "The war?" she asked softly, beginning to clean the fresh wound with gentle hands. "Some," Grant admitted. "Others from life on the frontier. Cattle rustlers don't fight fair, neither does fire," Zara replied, focused on her task. Grant watched her work, his eyes never leaving her face. "You're good at this." "I've had practice with Thomas." She pressed a clean cloth against the wound. "This needs stitches." "Can you do it?" Grant asked. "The doctor might be hours yet." Zara hesitated. "I've only ever stitched fabric, not flesh." "The principle's the same," Grant said with a ghost of a smile, "and I trust your hands." The unexpected vote of confidence made Zara's heart beat faster. "I'll need proper supplies. Thread, a clean needle. Mrs. Winters will have what we need," Grant said. "And whiskey, definitely whiskey." While Mrs. Winters gathered the necessary items, Zara helped Grant lie down more comfortably. His cabin was spartanly furnished but neat, with a few books stacked by the bed and a cavalry photograph on the wall. "Were you an officer?" she asked, nodding toward the picture. "Lieutenant," he confirmed. "Spent most of the war scouting in the Western Territories. Kept me away from the worst of the fighting, but not all of it." Mrs. Winters returned with the supplies, including a bottle of good whiskey. "Doctor's on his way, but it might be a while. Do what you can, Miss Foster." Left alone again, Zara sterilized a needle in the flame of a lantern, then threaded it with fine silk thread. "You should drink some of that whiskey," she advised Grant. "This will hurt." He took a swig from the bottle, then another. "Not my first time being stitched up by a beautiful woman," he said, the pain and alcohol loosening his tongue. Zara nearly dropped the needle. "I think the blood loss is affecting your judgment, Mr. Mackenzie." "Grant," he corrected. "And no, it's not. I've thought you beautiful since I first saw you in the apothecary." Zara began the first stitch, partly to distract him from such nonsensical talk. "You need to hold still." Despite the pain, Grant remained remarkably steady as Zara worked, her needle moving in and out of his flesh with the same precision she applied to her finest embroidery. The intimacy of the moment wasn't lost on her, the trust he placed in her hands, the vulnerability of his position. "There," she said finally, cutting the thread after the last stitch. "Not my finest work, but it should hold until the doctor arrives." "Thank you," Grant said, his voice low and sincere. He reached for her hand, clasping it in his much larger one. "I meant what I said, Zara. You are beautiful." The use of her first name, combined with the warmth of his hand on hers, sent a flutter through her chest. "You should rest now," she said, gently extracting her hand. "The doctor will want to check my handiwork. Will you stay?" He asked, his eyes already growing heavy from the whiskey and exhaustion. "Just until I fall asleep." She should have refused, should have made an excuse about returning to her sewing or checking on Thomas. Instead, she found herself nodding, settling into the chair beside his bed. "Tell me about your dreams," Grant murmured, his eyes closed. "What would you do if you weren't afraid of people seeing your scars?" The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked about her dreams before, not even Thomas, who focused on his own ambitions for them both. "I'd open a proper dressmaking shop," she admitted quietly. "Not just for practical garments, but beautiful ones. Wedding dresses, ball gowns, christening gowns. I'd make things that celebrate the important moments in people's lives." "You should do it," Grant said, his voice fading as sleep began to claim him. "Your hands create magic." Before Zara could respond, his breathing deepened into sleep. She remained beside him, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest until the doctor arrived an hour later. The following days brought a shift in their relationship. As Grant recovered, he sought out Zara's company more deliberately. Sometimes he would sit quietly in the sewing room while she worked, reading a book or simply watching her hands move across the fabric. Other times, he would invite her and Thomas to join him for short walks around the ranch property in the evenings. Thomas, observant as ever, noticed the change. "He likes you," he commented one night as Zara was helping him prepare for bed, and not in a pitying way either. "Don't be ridiculous," Zara replied, though her cheeks warmed. "He's just grateful I helped with his injury." "Is that why he looks at you when he thinks no one is watching, or why he always makes sure to sit near you at dinner?" Thomas raised an eyebrow. "I may be recovering from illness, sister, but I'm not blind. Even if what you say is true," Zara said carefully, "it doesn't mean anything. We're leaving after the wedding next week, back to our cabin, back to our real lives." Thomas's expression grew serious. "Mr. Winters offered me a permanent position managing the ranch accounts. I was going to talk to you about it." Zara sat heavily on the edge of the bed. "You want to stay here, permanently? It's good work, fair pay, and the fresh air has done wonders for my health." Thomas reached for her hand. "But I won't accept if you're uncomfortable with the arrangement." "What about me? Would I stay too?" The thought of living at the ranch indefinitely, seeing Grant daily, both thrilled and terrified her. Mrs. Winters mentioned converting the old overseer's house into a proper sewing workshop for you, Thomas revealed. "She's been impressed with your work on Harriet's wedding clothes, says she could send clients your way from her social circle." The opportunity was more than Zara had ever dared hope for. Yet the prospect of greater visibility, of more people seeing her scars, filled her with dread. "I need time to think," she told Thomas. "It's a generous offer, but you're afraid," he finished for her. "I understand, just promise me you'll consider it." "This could be the fresh start we both need." Zara promised, though her mind was in turmoil. That night, unable to sleep, she slipped out of the house and into the garden. The full moon illuminated the paths between flowering bushes, and the night air carried the scent of late roses. "Couldn't sleep either." Grant's voice came from the shadows near the old oak tree. Zara startled, then relaxed as he stepped into the moonlight. "I have a lot on my mind." "Thomas mentioned the job offer," Grant said, moving to stand beside her. "It's a good opportunity for him." "Yes, it is." "And for you too, if you'll take it." Grant's voice was gentle but insistent. "Mrs. Winters doesn't offer her patronage lightly." Zara wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware that she had come outside without her shawl. Her scars would be clearly visible in the moonlight. "I'm not sure I'm ready for that kind of visibility," she admitted. "Working from our cabin, I can control who sees me, here with clients coming and going." Grant stepped closer. "May I?" he asked, raising his hand toward her face. Zara froze, her heart racing. Slowly, she nodded. His fingers were gentle as they traced the edge of her scars from temple to jaw. "Do you know what I see when I look at these marks?" Zara shook her head, unable to form words with his touch sending tingles across her skin. "Courage," he said simply. "The kind that faces each day despite knowing it will bring pain. The kind that puts a brother's needs before personal comfort. The kind that stitches up a stubborn cowboy without flinching." His hand cupped her cheek now, warm against her skin. "The world is cruel to those who are different, Zara. I won't pretend it isn't, but hiding away means the cruel people win." "And what's the alternative?" she whispered, facing their stares and whispers every day, facing them until they become background noise, living your life on your terms, not theirs. Grant's thumb brushed her cheekbone. Finding people who see the light that gets in through your scars. People like you. The question escaped before she could stop it. In answer, Grant lowered his head slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. When she didn't, his lips met hers in a kiss so tender it brought tears to her eyes. His hand remained on her scarred cheek, holding her as if she were made of precious porcelain. When they parted, Zara's breath came in short gasps. Why? She asked, unable to comprehend why this man, this handsome, capable man who could have any woman, would choose her. Because from the moment I saw you in that apothecary, trying so hard to be invisible, I recognized a soul that matched my own. Grant's eyes held hers steadily. We all have scars, Zara. Yours are just more visible than most. And yours? She asked, remembering the map of old wounds on his torso. Some you can see, he said quietly. Others are buried deeper, the war left marks that don't show on skin. Understanding dawned. The nightmares she sometimes heard him having from her window, the way he positioned himself to always face doors and windows, his hyper-awareness of sudden movements, these weren't just habits, but symptoms of deeper wounds. We're quite a pair, Zara said with a sad smile. Broken in different ways. Not broken, Grant corrected. Mended, like your Japanese pottery with gold in the cracks, stronger at the broken places. He kissed her again, more urgently this time, and Zara felt something inside her shift, a wall crumbling, a door opening to possibilities she had long since abandoned. Stay, Grant whispered against her lips. Stay and build a life here with your brother, with me. People will talk, she warned. The scarred seamstress and the ranch foreman. Let them, Grant replied with a shrug. Their words can only hurt if we give them that power. Zara took a deep breath, feeling the weight of years of hiding pressing against the newfound lightness in her chest. I need time, she said finally. This is all happening so fast. Grant stepped back, respecting her space. Take all the time you need, I'm not going anywhere. Harriet's wedding day arrived with perfect autumn weather, crisp air, golden sunlight, and trees beginning to show hints of color. The ceremony was to take place at the ranch, with guests from surrounding properties and Copper Creek filling the chairs set up in the garden. Zara helped Harriet dress, making last-minute adjustments to ensure the gown fell perfectly. The bride looked radiant, her happiness infectious. You've worked miracles with grandmother's old dress, Harriet said, twirling before the mirror. I don't know how to thank you. Seeing you happy in it is thanks enough, Zara replied, genuinely pleased with her work. As Harriet left to join her father for the procession, Zara lingered in the bedroom, gathering her sewing supplies. She had planned to watch the ceremony from a distance, not wanting to distract from the bride's day with her scarred presence among the guests. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Mrs. Winters entered, elegant in a deep blue dress. There you are, Miss Foster. We've saved seats for you and your brother in the family section. Zara's eyes widened. That's very kind, but I couldn't possibly. You created the masterpiece my daughter is wearing, Mrs. Winters said firmly. Your brother has become essential to our business operations. And Mackenzie has made his intentions quite clear regarding your future here. Heat rose to Zara's cheeks. Mr. Mackenzie has been very kind, but kind, Mrs. Winters scoffed. The man is besotted. And from what I observe, the feeling is mutual, though you both dance around it like skittish colts. Before Zara could form a response, Mrs. Winters continued. The past doesn't define us, Miss Foster, unless we allow it to. Your scars are part of your story, not the whole of it. She placed a small box in Zara's hands. This was meant to be payment for your extraordinary work, but I'd like you to consider it a gift instead. Perhaps you might wear it today. With that, she left Zara alone with the box. Inside, nestled on velvet, lay a delicate gold and pearl hairpin in the shape of a cascading flower. It was beautiful, far too fine for someone like her. A note beneath it read, "For the artist whose hands create beauty from broken things." Tears pricked at Zara's eyes as she stood before the mirror. Slowly, deliberately, she removed her customary shawl. Her scars stood out starkly against her skin, the ridged flesh catching the light. With trembling fingers, she arranged her hair, pinning it with Mrs. Winter's gift so that it framed rather than hid her face. For the first time in 12 years, she looked at her reflection without flinching. Grant's words echoed in her mind. That's where the light gets in. Taking a deep breath, she left the safety of the bedroom and made her way to the garden. The ceremony was about to begin, guests already seated in neat rows. As she approached, heads turned, whispers arose for a moment, panic threatened to overwhelm her. Then she spotted Grant in the front row beside Thomas. He stood as he saw her, his face lighting up with a smile that warmed her from across the garden. Beside him, Thomas beamed with pride. Head high, Zara walked down the side aisle to join them. She felt the stares, heard the murmurs, but for the first time she didn't let them define her movements. Grant extended his hand as she reached them, and she took it without hesitation, allowing him to guide her to the seat beside him. "You look beautiful," he whispered, his eyes taking in the hairpin, the arranged hair, the exposed scars. "Absolutely beautiful." The ceremony proceeded perfectly, Harriet radiant in the restored vintage gown that Zara had painstakingly altered. As vows were exchanged and rings placed on fingers, Grant's hand remained firmly clasped around Zara's. During the celebration that followed, Zara steeled herself for the inevitable awkward encounters. Some guests did indeed stare or whisper behind their hands. Others, following the Winters family's lead, treated her with unexpected warmth and respect. "Your work on the bride's gown is exquisite," one woman from a neighboring ranch commented. "My daughter is marrying next spring. Might you consider creating her dress as well?" Such interactions, while still uncomfortable, no longer felt like attacks. With Grant beside her, his steady presence a reminder of her worth beyond her appearance, Zara found herself able to engage in conversations that would have sent her fleeing weeks earlier. As the evening progressed and lanterns were lit around the garden, Grant led Zara away from the crowd toward a quiet corner where a small string ensemble played. "Dance with me," he said, extending his hand. "I don't know how," Zara admitted. "I've never." "Then let me teach you," Grant replied. "It's easy, you just follow my lead." Hesitantly, she placed her hand in his, allowing him to guide her into a simple waltz. At first, she stumbled, her focus on her feet rather than the music. But Grant was patient, his hand firm at her waist, guiding her through the steps until she began to feel the rhythm. "See," he murmured as they turned beneath the lantern light, "you're a natural." "Hardly," Zara laughed softly, "but it's nicer than I imagined." "What is dancing?" "Being seen," she clarified. "Really seen by someone who doesn't look away." Grant's arm tightened around her waist. "I have something to ask you, Zara Foster." The seriousness in his tone made her heart skip. "Yes, Mr. Winters has offered me a partnership in the ranch. A small stake now with the opportunity to increase my ownership over time." His eyes held her steadily. "I'm going to accept." "That's wonderful," Zara said sincerely. "You deserve it." "The thing is," Grant continued, "I can't imagine building that future without you in it." He slowed their dance to a gentle sway. "I know it's fast. We've known each other barely a month, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Zara's breath caught as he reached into his pocket, withdrawing a simple gold band. "It was my mother's," he explained. "I've carried it since she passed, waiting for the right woman to wear it." "Grant," she whispered, hardly believing what was happening. "I'm not asking for an immediate answer," he assured her. "Take time to be certain, but I want you to know my intentions are serious. I love you, Zara Foster. Your strength, your gentleness, your talent, everything about you, including the scars that show where the light gets in." Tears spilled down Zara's cheeks as he spoke, catching on the ridges of her scarred skin. "I've spent 12 years believing no one could ever want me," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Believing I didn't deserve happiness or love, and now," Grant asked, his own voice unsteady, "now I'm beginning to see myself through your eyes." Zara reached up, touching his face with trembling fingers. "And I'm starting to believe that perhaps I do deserve those things, that perhaps we both do." "Is that a yes?" Grant asked, hope brightening his features. I need a little more time," Zara replied honestly. "Not because I don't care for you, I do, more than I thought possible. but because I need to be sure I'm choosing this for the right reasons. Not from fear of being alone or gratitude for your kindness, but because it's truly what my heart wants." Grant nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Time is something I can give." He took her hand, pressing the ring into her palm and closing her fingers around it. "Keep this, think about it. When you're ready, whether the answer is yes or no, I'll be here." The gesture, so respectful of her need for certainty, only confirmed what her heart already knew. But Zara appreciated the space to come to her decision fully, without pressure. As autumn deepened into winter, Zara and Thomas settled permanently at the Winters Ranch. The old overseer's house was indeed converted into a sewing studio for Zara, with large windows providing excellent light for detailed work and a separate entrance for clients. To her surprise, her business flourished. Word spread about the talented seamstress at the Winters Ranch, and women from surrounding properties and even from Copper Creek itself sought her services. Some still stared or whispered about her scars, but increasingly, her work spoke louder than her appearance. Thomas thrived as the ranch accountant, his health continuing to improve with regular exercise and good food. He formed a close friendship with Mr. Winters, who began teaching him about ranch management beyond the ledgers, and Grant. Grant was patient, as promised. He never pressed Zara for an answer about the ring she kept in a small box beside her bed. Instead, he courted her properly, bringing wildflowers from his rides, reading aloud to her in the evenings while she sewed, teaching her to ride a gentle mare so they could explore the ranch property together. Their first Christmas at the ranch brought a heavy snowfall that transformed the landscape into a glistening wonderland. The Winters family invited all the ranch workers and their families for a celebration in the main house, with music, dancing, and enough food to feed an army. Zara, who had once dreaded such gatherings, found herself looking forward to the festivities. She had created a new dress for the occasion, deep green velvet with delicate embroidery at the neckline and cuffs. For the first time, she designed the neckline to be slightly asymmetrical, drawing the eye to the elegant embroidery rather than attempting to hide her scars. As she dressed for the party, Zara studied her reflection. The woman who looked back at her was changed from the one who had arrived at the ranch months ago. Her posture was straighter, her eyes clearer, her expression open rather than guarded, the gold and pearl hairpin from Mrs. Winters adorned her carefully arranged hair, and around her neck hung a simple gold locket, a Christmas gift from Grant that morning. Inside was a tiny portrait of her parents, copied from the single photograph she had saved from the fire. "How did you find an artist to paint this?" she had asked, tears in her eyes as she examined the miniature likenesses. "Mrs. Winters knows a portrait artist in Santa Fe," Grant had explained. "I sent him the photograph months ago. Do you like it?" "It's the most thoughtful gift I've ever received," Zara had replied, overcome with emotion. Now, with the locket nestled against her heart, Zara felt ready to face the evening and her future. She had carried Grant's mother's ring in its box long enough. Tonight, she would give him her answer. The main house was transformed for the celebration. Evergreen boughs and red ribbons adorned every surface. Candles and lanterns cast a warm glow over the gathering, and the dining room table groaned under the weight of holiday dishes. As Zara entered, her eyes sought Grant immediately. He stood near the fireplace, engaged in conversation with Mr. Winters and several ranch hands. When he spotted her, he excused himself and crossed the room to her side. "You look stunning," he said, taking her hand and raising it to his lips. "That color suits you." "Thank you," Zara replied, no longer deflecting compliments as she once would have. "You look quite handsome yourself." And he did, in a new black suit with a crisp white shirt and string tie. The evening progressed pleasantly, with abundant food, music from a hired fiddler, and dancing in the cleared parlor. Zara moved through the gathering with growing confidence, accepting dance invitations not only from Grant but from Thomas, Mr. Winters, and even several of the ranch hands who had come to respect her over the months. Near midnight, as the celebration continued around them, Grant led Zara to the relative quiet of the library. A small fire burned in the grate, casting dancing shadows on the book-lined walls. "I wanted a moment alone with you," he explained, closing the door partway to maintain propriety while affording them privacy. "This is our first Christmas together. I hope it won't be our last." Zara smiled, her heart pounding with anticipation. "I have something for you," she said, reaching into the pocket of her dress. Grant watched curiously as she withdrew the small box he had given her months ago at Harriet's wedding. His expression grew serious as she opened it, revealing his mother's ring nestled inside. "I've had enough time," Zara said softly, "and I've never been more certain of anything in my life." She took the ring and held it out to him. "Ask me again, Grant Mackenzie." Grant took the ring with trembling fingers, then dropped to one knee before her. "Zara Foster, you've brought light into my life where there was only shadow. Will you marry me? Will you build a future with me, filled with all the beauty your hands create and all the love your heart holds?" "Yes," Zara replied, her voice clear and certain. "With all my heart, yes." Grant slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to gather her in his arms. His kiss was tender at first, then deepened with the promise of their shared future. When they finally parted, both were breathless. "When?" Grant asked, his forehead resting against hers. "Spring," Zara decided. "When the wildflowers bloom. I'll make my own wedding dress the most beautiful gown I've ever created. You could wear a flower sack and still be the most beautiful bride in the territory," Grant said, making her laugh. They returned to the party hand in hand, and Grant called for attention. The announcement of their engagement was met with cheers and congratulations, genuine warmth emanating from the gathered ranch family. Thomas embraced Zara tightly. "I told you he was worth considering," he teased, then shook Grant's hand firmly. "Take care of my sister, Mackenzie." "With my life," Grant promised solemnly. As predicted, Zara and Grant were married the following spring beneath a canopy of wildflowers on the highest hill of the Winters Ranch. Zara's wedding dress was indeed her masterpiece, ivory silk with delicate lace she had salvaged and restored from her mother's wedding veil, embroidered with tiny flowers that matched those blooming around them. At Grant's insistence, she wore her hair up but uncovered, her scars visible to all who attended. And as she had learned over the months, those who mattered saw beyond them to the woman she had become. The ceremony was simple but profound. When it came time for Grant to speak his vows, he took both her hands in his eyes never leaving hers. "Zara Foster Mackenzie," he began, the new name making her heart swell, "I vow to truly see you every day of our lives together. I vow to remind you whenever you forget that your scars are where the light gets in. And I vow to share my own scars with you, knowing they're safe in your keeping." Zara's vows, spoken through happy tears, promised similar devotion. "I vow to step into the light with you, Grant Mackenzie, no longer hiding in shadows. I vow to create beauty with these hands that you treasure and to hold your heart as carefully as you've held mine." Their first year of marriage brought changes to the ranch. With his growing partnership stake, Grant implemented new breeding programs that improved their cattle stock. Zara's sewing business expanded to include a small staff of apprentices, young women eager to learn from her expertise. And Thomas, now fully recovered from his illness, began courting the schoolteacher from Copper Creek, who had come to the ranch for a dress fitting and returned frequently thereafter. On their first anniversary, Grant surprised Zara with the deed to a plot of land adjacent to the main ranch house. "What's this?" she asked, examining the legal document. "Our future," Grant explained. "Mr. Winters is letting us build our own home here, close enough to be part of ranch operations but with space for our family to grow." The home took shape over the following months, a sturdy two-story structure with a wide porch, large windows for Zara's sewing room, and several bedrooms for the children they hoped to have. By their second anniversary, they moved in, bringing with them furniture built by the ranch carpenter and curtains and linens Zara had lovingly created. That autumn, Zara discovered she was expecting their first child. The news filled them both with joy and some trepidation. "What if the baby inherits my scars?" Zara worried one night as they lay in bed, Grant's hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. First, that's not how scars work, Grant said practically. And second, if our child faces challenges of any kind, they'll have us to show them how to find strength in adversity. As Zara's pregnancy progressed, her business continued to thrive. Mrs. Winter's social connections brought clients from as far away as Denver, seeking Zara's designs for special occasions. Some still reacted to her scarred face with surprise or discomfort, but increasingly, her reputation as an artist preceded her appearance. Thomas and his schoolteacher, Mary, were married that winter in a ceremony. Zara attended heavily pregnant but radiant in a gown she had designed to accommodate her changing body. The Winters family gifted the newlyweds with a small house on the ranch property, ensuring the Foster siblings remained close. In early spring, Zara gave birth to a daughter they named Grace, a healthy child with her father's dark hair and her mother's expressive eyes. Grant proved to be a devoted father, as comfortable cradling an infant as he was breaking wild horses. One evening, as Zara nursed their daughter in the rocking chair by the window, Grant knelt beside them, his expression one of wonder. "You ever think about how much our lives have changed?" He asked softly. "If you hadn't been at the apothecary that day, or if you hadn't spoken to me," Zara added, "if you had looked away like everyone else." "I couldn't have looked away if I'd tried," Grant admitted. "Something about you called to me from the first moment." Zara smiled down at their daughter, now sleeping peacefully against her breast. "Perhaps it was the light getting in," she suggested, "shining through all our broken places." "I like that thought," Grant said, leaning forward to kiss her scarred cheek with tender reverence. Outside their window, the sun set over the rolling ranch land that had become their home, painting the sky with colors as vibrant as the future they had built together. A future where scars told stories of survival, where broken things were mended with gold, and where love illuminated even the darkest corners of human experience. For Zara and Grant Mackenzie, that light would continue to shine through all the days of their lives together, a beacon guiding them home no matter what storms might come.